Man, early life for me, it was different than maybe your average. I mean, everybody has their challenges and struggles in life. But growing up in Bridgeport, Connecticut, it was a place that had a lot going on. There was a lot of gangs, a lot of drug activity going on. The mob was very, very prevalent. Bridgeport, Connecticut, if you're not familiar, as the crow flies, is probably about 25 minutes east, 25 miles or so east of New York City, lower part of Connecticut. And I didn't grow up with much. My father immigrated from Romania in the mid 70s. My mom was the youngest of six. She lost her father early in life as well. And really, at like the age of 5 is where like everything began for me as an individual. And what I mean by that is I was in kindergarten and I was already taking care of myself by making my own lunches, going to school. I had a sister that was 2 years younger than me, and as long as I can remember, I was taking care of her in addition to taking care of me as well. So, like literally every step of life, I feel like as far as I can actually remember, I've been doing everything on my own, and this EP was really no different as well. I put this whole thing together completely by myself from a production standpoint. I definitely had some help, with my engineer, but that's all I've ever known, which has always made it very hard for me as an individual to give up really anything. And the younger years is really what shaped me. I grew up in a place called Block Rock section of Bridgeport, where anybody that knows Block Rock, there's definitely some parts of it, at least where I was growing up, was very affluent. But I was right on the line of where that affluency and what people would consider the hood really started. So I had the best of both worlds in the sense of culture and community. I got to know a lot of different cultures. Bridgeport, Connecticut is a melting pot of many different nationalities and cultures that come with that. So, like growing up playing baseball, for example, I got to interact with a lot of people from Black culture, and hip hop became, very influential to me, especially growing up in a white family, with my grandparents as well coming from Eastern Europe. My grandfather, man, he was the epitome of what racist is. And in some cases along the way where kids grow up in their environment and they're told something, they're conditioned to something. Me, I was the exact opposite, and I'm still that way to this day, at almost 45 years old, in the sense that the more he told me that Black and brown people were bad people, and the things that he would say about him, I've always been inquisitive. I always wanted to inquire. I wanted to learn for myself. Everything I do in life, I want to learn for myself. I live by a saying, know enough to be dangerous. Like anything that I do, I've got to have some kind of working knowledge of it, especially these days if I'm going to hand something off to people. So the more he told me, how bad, certain cultures were that were not the same skin color as myself, well, I wanted to learn more. And that actually, his position actually drove me to learn more. And it was really important for me in those early years because I got to learn cultures. I got to interact with these cultures. I wanted to know more so I can understand two things. Number one, why is he saying these things? But also I wanted to learn from myself. And what I learned from that was, at the end of the day, people are just human beings. It's really nothing more than that. And I've learned from that very young age that cultures are cultures. And that's what drove me to the hip hop culture. Because for me and my experiences, if you look at the principles of hip hop, like the actual principles, it's really principles of a human race at the end of the day. And, it was challenging for me growing up. Like I said earlier, at 5, I was literally taking care of myself and my sister. And that's how it's been, my entire life, especially going up through those adolescent years as well, because I didn't have too much influence. I mean, don't get me wrong, my parents kept a roof over our head, food on the table, like parents are supposed to do. But, I would say I grew up in like a one and a third parent household. And what I mean by that is my parents were always working different shifts. My father worked overnights for 40 years in a liquor warehouse. So even though he was there providing for us, he wasn't there. I really didn't have that influence of him as a male figure. So I reached out to other male figures throughout my life. I never had really looked at my father that way. And to an extent, even now, I don't. And so gravitating to other male figures really helped shape me as an individual, even from a hustle perspective. I mean, I remember, as early as like fourth grade, because I used to walk to school. There were some corner stores along the way that weren't too far. I would actually leave home early in the morning, and I would go down to the corner store, and I'd get a bunch of candy and stuff like that, and I would start hustling candy. I've hustled my entire life. Like I mentioned kindergarten earlier, if anybody remembers, in school growing up, you had like those candy bar selling contests. I won every year. Every year, like by the time we got to the third year of being in school, people just knew that they were fighting for second place because I just had that drive in me to the point where, it's not like today where you have to like get a permit and stuff like that to sell outside supermarkets. So I would literally have my mom or my dad, depending on what his work schedule was, I would literally be like, yo, take me to Stop and Shop. And I would sit right outside the exit at Stop and Shop by myself, 5 years old, 6 years old, 7 years old. My parents would wait in the car. They weren't out there with me. This was my hustle. I didn't want them there with me because I was shaping myself at those early years to really formulate who I'm going to become as an individual in my story of life here in the physical form. And that's all I've ever known. It was challenging. I didn't have a lot of what most kids had, especially those that I grew up with. Again, earlier I had mentioned as well, like I had some affluent kids that I ran with, but on the other end of the spectrum, I very much related to and understood, kids growing up in the hood that really didn't have a lot. So it gave me a lot of perspective that kids don't get. And I'm very thankful for that. And I can look back at that now at my age of almost 45 and understand that the universe was doing that for a reason, because I was able to understand both ends of the spectrum and everything in between. And that's helped me walk through life with respect to treating people equally. There's a good old saying, treat the janitor the same as you would a CEO. And that's exactly how I roll, because at the end of the day, I just look at those as roles. But there are humans behind those respective roles as well. So despite the challenges that I had, of walking through that darkness at an early age, I'm very grateful for it, because I feel like if I don't go through those experiences, I don't really become the person that I am today with respect to understanding not just people, but things that happen in life. They happen for a reason. I mean, one of the earliest memories that I have, I remember we lived on a second floor, Brewster Street in Bridgeport, Connecticut. I remember eating a hot dog, and I remember choking on that hot dog. I remember passing out. I obviously only remember so much, but this is what I remember from that experience. I remember choking almost to death. I remember passing out. I remember at some point seeing a light. I can hear vague yells of my mom. I think my mom and my dad were both there when this was going on. And next thing I know, I'm just awake. And it was a very wild experience. I vividly remember it to this day. Other things I vividly remember with respect to my parents' relationship, man, it was a shitty relationship. Like I grew up and was conditioned in an environment of, relationships, which again helped teach me my parents would fight constantly. My father's an alcoholic. My mom is an addict, was an addict. She passed away a couple of years ago. Gambling, alcohol. She was selling drugs. It was a very interesting experience. I mean, I remember my father at like 5 years old in that same house on Brewster Street that I talked about, choking my mom with her own purse. So there was a lot of violence. There was a lot of headbutting. And even from the mental aspect of trauma, my parents would go 2-3 weeks fighting and not talking to each other. And the tension in our household, it was like walking on eggshells. And it really conditioned me into my relationships, not really in a productive way throughout. When I started having relationships, whether it would be, with girlfriends or, those that ended up becoming my significant others, throughout life, I had to reshape myself. I had to relearn myself. I had to reteach myself the proper way to communicate through relationships. That way there could be a strong relationship, because communication is ultimately the foundation of any relationship. I don't care if it's a coworker, a friend, a girlfriend, boyfriend, wife, husband, cousin, someone that you're just meeting for the first time, and they might be more of an acquaintance to you. So I really had to learn a lot of things in life. It was a dark adolescent and childhood that I grew up in. But I know now I needed to go through that to experience what I experienced, to bring me to everything that's coming my way. And that's where this EP really begins. Literally, my origin story begins with the line 313, 1981. Mr. and Mrs. Palavra, you have a newborn baby son. Because I had to go back in my transformation in life, especially the last 5 years. I'm an alcoholic. So I quit drinking a little over 4.5 years ago. That was a conscious effort that I had to make, because it was booze or it was my family. And what I've been doing over the last 5 years, and even a little bit before then, but very much more consciously over the last 5 years at this point, I had to go back and tap into the inner child that is still here with me. I had to reteach that individual. I had to parent myself as a parent now. And that's helped me along the way as well. So it was very important for me in starting this art, music journey that I go back to the beginning. And that's why I titled this EP, The Chronicles of a Villain, because literally every single one of these tracks is a chapter of my life that began at birth on March 13th, 1981, leading up to damn near about this conversation that I'm having with you right now. And I'm grateful for every chapter that I lived, because it has put me in a position of strength and confidence, but most importantly, seeking understanding, whether it be with a relationship, whether it be with a scenario or a situation. Because this last year, out of all the things that I've shared with you, I've now, mind you as well, I've divorced my whole entire family. There is not one person in my blood-related family that I speak with in any way, shape, or form. And that's a conscious choice by me, because they don't serve the purpose of life that I'm looking to move forward. I grew up in a family of narcissists, selfish people who really don't care about others. And I had to distance myself from that. And out of all of that I've experienced growing up in my childhood, going through teenage years and whatnot, the reality of it is, the last year that I've experienced has been by far the most challenging year I've ever experienced. I mean, I was 2 days away from being evicted with my family. Our car got repoed. We got it back. But again, all the things that I shared with you in this video, all of the things that I went through last year, I know it was the universal test to me to see if I can withstand that way, with all the blessings that I know are coming my way, that I can withstand that as well. And I'm grateful for it. So I appreciate y'all being here with me. I'm inviting you in with this EP, The Chronicles of a Villain. 8 chapters of my life. And it's just the catalyst for what's about to happen. Because I'm dropping this and then I'm coming right back immediately with some new stories, with some new experiences, with some new music and some new art for y'all to enjoy. So take this ride with me. Lid 13. The reason I named myself Lid 13 as a hip hop artist, it's an acronym that stands for light in darkness. I've lived both sides. I refer to myself as the villain. And a villain that I know is not the one that people think as the bad person. The way I discern what a villain is someone who has lived in both the light and the dark, but most importantly, someone that can walk in the light and the dark day in and day out because they know how to do it in a valuable manner. So please, I'm asking you, if you want real, if you lived both sides of the light and the dark, you're looking for healing through art, you're looking for healing through music, you're looking for somebody that you could ultimately be like, yo, I relate to that person. Well, that's me, Lid 13. I've lived it all. I'm gonna live more. And I'm thankful and grateful for everything that I have received in this life. And I'm gonna be grateful and embrace everything that I get going forward, good, bad, or indifferent. Because at the end of the day, we all have our own paths to walk. And I firmly believe that those paths are already laid out for us. It's really just up to us to walk that path and take everything that comes our way with it. February 16th, 2026, you are getting Lid 13, The Chronicles of a Villain. I'm here, baby. Light in the darkness. Follow.